everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup video. Today I am covering a very heavy case. We are talking about some of the most heinous things that you could ever imagine and some of the most evilest people that has ever been on this earth. If you feel like you might struggle with this case, please switch it off, come back for another video that you feel you might be able to handle a bit better, because this one, it is really tough. Today I will be covering the murders of Channon Christian and also Chris Newsom. These are also known as the Knoxville Murders. Now, Channon and Chris, they were a young happy couple who on the 6th of January 2007 were meant to be attending their friend's birthday party, but they would never arrive. A night that should have been filled with fun and celebrations would actually be the beginning of a brutal and torturous end for this couple. Channon and Chris, they were sitting in the parking lot of an apartment whilst they were getting ready to leave to go to dinner before their friend's party, and they did not realise that a group of assailants, 4 males and 1 female, were watching over them. The couple would be held at gunpoint, they would be taken in Channon's 4Runner SUV, and they would be taken to 2316 Chipman Road. This would be the home of the group leader, Lamarcius Davidson, and this is where the most horrific case would take place. Before we get into this case, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel, notification bell on. I upload every Wednesday and Sunday without fail at 7:30 British Standard Time. All the details that you need will be down below in the description box, so check down there for social media handles, makeup products, etc. You can also email over your case suggestions or leave them in the comments down below. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the case of the murders of Channon Christian and Chris Newsom. 7-Up might be like my biggest obsession just now. Like, I could drink an 8-pack of these. I don't, but I could, but I won't. So, Channon Gail Christian, she was a beautiful girl born on the 29th of April of 1985. She was born in Texas and had moved from Louisiana to Tennessee with her family in 1997. So at this point, she was just 12 years old. Channon would graduate from Farragut High School in 2003, and then she was a senior majoring in sociology at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Channon was just one of those girls that really had it all. I mean, she was gorgeous, she had a beautiful personality, she was kind, everyone loved and adored her, and above all, she was smart, she was intelligent, and she was going to do big things. She had really big dreams for her future, and she was looking forward to graduating in December of 2007. And devastatingly for Channon, this day would never come. She would never get to her graduation. Devastatingly, Channon would only be 21 years old when her life was taken from her in the most evilest of ways that you could ever imagine. Now, Channon had been described by those who love her, you know, her friends and family, as being someone who was so incredibly smart and intelligent. She had the biggest, kindest heart ever. She was so generous. Everyone complimented her outward beauty as well as her inside beauty, but her outward beauty, as you can see in the photos that I'll show you, I mean, she is strikingly gorgeous. Like, you would walk by Channon on a street and you would double take. She is beautiful, but she was never full of herself. Like, despite all the compliments that she would receive, she never once thought she was better than anyone, or she never once believed that she was better looking than anyone. She was so humble and just one of life's good people. Channon's family and friends have also stated that regardless of how much time goes by since her murder, she is missed every single day in that exact same way that she was the first day they learned what had happened to her. They cherish her, the memories that they had with her, and they just love and miss her so much. And the other victim in today's case is Hugh Christopher Newsom, who is better known as Chris by those who knew and loved him. Chris was born on September the 21st of 1983, and he was known to be an amazing baseball player, right? He played in his high school team, the Red Devils. He attended Halls High School and he graduated from there in 2002. Now, after high school, and I do apologise because I might get this wrong, but he attended Pellissippi Community College, and here he would learn to become a carpenter, which is a really impressive trade to get into. I mean, that takes some serious skill. And he was really good at it. But devastatingly, just like his girlfriend Channon, Chrissy's dreams and the life and future that he dreamed of would be ripped from underneath him at just the age of 23. Chris, just like Channon, is remembered for so many amazing things. His generous, kind heart, his kind soul, his incredible baseball skills that no one will ever forget because he was so gifted in that area. A lot of his friends believed that he could have went on to be like pro baseball, you know? Like, they thought he was that good. He had an infectious smile and he just had the best sense of humour, and just like Channon again, he is so missed and so cherished to this very day, and the pain that Channon and Chrissy's family feels will never go away. Now, Channon and Chris together, they were this beautiful couple. I mean, they looked gorgeous together. They were perfectly suited and they were described as just being so in love. Like, do you know when you see couples and you can just see from the way they interact with each other, like their body language, how they look at each other, you can just tell that there is so much love and connection between them. And their family and their friends, they believed that Channon and Chris one day would have got married. So we are going to go back to the night that this absolute tragedy took place, and that night was January the 6th, 2007. So Channon and Chris, they were planning on attending a friend's birthday party that very evening. Now, they thought, do you know what, like, maybe we should go out to dinner, have a wee bit of alone time, and then we can meet all of our friends at the party, which is quite normal to do. Like, I know myself and my boyfriend, we used to always go for maybe like dinner, a couple of drinks, and then we would go meet our friends at the pub. Like, it's quite a typical thing to do, I think. Now, earlier that very day, Channon had went around to one of her friends' houses and she was getting ready there, which I think as women, young girls, we can all agree that getting ready with your best friend before a night out is better than the night out itself. Like, that to me, that's the night out. All of that there. And she was getting herself all dressed up, not only for the party, but also for Chris, for them going out to dinner. So around 8 p.m, Channon's friend, she leaves to attend the party, and Channon says to her, you know, I'll see you later, me and Chris will meet you there. Be a great night, really looking forward to it. So Channon waits behind for Chris to pick her up and take her to dinner. Now, Chris, on his way to pick up Channon, he would drop off one of his friends at the party, and this was said to be closer to 9 p.m. Once Chris arrived at the apartment complex, Channon comes out and they're both just sitting in the parking lot for a little bit of time, just chatting, catching up, giving each other a kiss and a cuddle because they were excited to see each other. So as I was saying, you know, Channon and Chris, they're just having this little moment between them, a special moment where they're just so in their own little bubble, their own little loving world, which I just adore. I think it's so cute to see. And they were hugging, they were kissing, and then they had kind of like a long embrace with each other. So, you know, cuddling for quite a long time. And whilst they're having this amazing, loving embrace with each other, little do they know, they are being watched very closely by this group of evil and sadistic individuals. Now at this point, Chris and Channon, they are close by Channon's car. So the individuals in this group, we've got George Giovanni Thomas. He was better known by his nickname Detroit. We've then got Latalvis Darnell Cobbins, and he was better known by his nickname Rome. Then we've got Lamarcius Duvall Davidson, and he was better known by his nickname Slim. There was also one female present at the time as well, and that was Vanessa Coleman, and then Eric Dwayne Boyd, and he was better known as E. Now, this group of assailants, they decide that they are going to attack the couple. Now, at first they say it was just meant to be a carjacking, right? Which in itself, in America, carries quite a sentence. That's a serious crime, of course it is. But they said it was a carjacking gone wrong. Let me tell you right now, Nothing about this crime was a carjacking gone wrong, because if it was a carjacking, they would never, ever have committed the crimes against Channon and Chris that they did, because these crimes are the most evil, sadistic and monstrous things that you could ever do to another human being. So don't try and tell me that it was a carjacking going wrong. You knew what you wanted to do. So Channon and Chris, they were basically held at gunpoint by this group. They forced Channon and Chris into the back of Channon's 4Runner SUV. Both of them were restrained with their hands tied behind their back, and they were taken to Davidson's house, which was at 2316 Chipman Road. And these horrifying events, they begin almost immediately when both Channon and Chris are raped. I'm so sorry, like, I am probably going to get emotional a few times. I will try and hold it together, but this is seriously one of the worst cases I have ever covered and researched, and it's really stayed with me. Now, according to the Knox County acting medical examiner, Chris had been sodomised with an object, and he had been brutally raped. So bad that he had injury to his anus and also inside. After this brutal rape of Chris, the group put an old dog leash around Chris's neck, and he was forced to walk barefoot to railroad tracks where he would be executed by this group. Now, when Chris had been murdered, his hands were bound, his legs were also bound together as well. He had been blindfolded with a bandana and also gagged with a sock. At the time of his murder, he was wearing only a shirt and also a pair of underwear. Now, it was very clear that Chris had been shot in his back and then also on his neck, which he initially survived. And had they stopped there at this point and, had they thought that Chris had passed away, he might have survived this. But they wouldn't stop there. Chris had then been shot in the head, and the muzzle of the gun had been put right up against his head, just above his right ear. And that shot severed his brainstem. And once these evil monsters were finished with Chris, they wrapped his body up in a comforter, they drenched his body in gasoline, and then they set him alight. And whilst Chris was being executed, Channon was left in the house with Vanessa Coleman, whilst the group went and did what they did to Chris. Apparently, Channon, she begged for her life, she begged to let go, she was absolutely terrified beyond belief. And can you imagine being in this situation and you know that Chris has been taken away to be killed, you know he's most likely not going to come back, and then you're in this by yourself. God knows what's going to happen to you. But Vanessa Coleman would not let Channon go. Of course she wouldn't, because she is as evil as the rest of them. And let's get that straight, because Vanessa Coleman tries to say that she's not, but she is just as evil. I hope you don't mind, but for the next part, I am just going to take a break from doing the makeup, because I just feel like the things that I'm going to say right now, I cannot sit and put makeup on whilst I say them. Once these monsters had murdered Chris, they went straight back to Davidson's house. The minute they got back, they proceeded to sexually torture Channon. At first, they repeatedly raped her. The medical examiner was able to conclude that Channon had died after suffering hours of severe sexual abuse, sexual torture, in the most heinous degree. She had sustained extremely severe injuries to her head, also to her vagina, anus, and her mouth. All severely injured from the sexual torture that she faced. The medical examiner also concluded that not only was Channon raped by this group, she was also raped with various different objects that had caused internal injury. The medical examiner had stated that what Channon had suffered was not simple sexual assault, not that any of it's simple, but this is their words. What she had suffered was extreme, severe, brutal and torturous sexual assault. It was also believed that Channon had been tied to a chair and she had been orally raped by Davidson and Cobbins. She had been beaten, she had been brutally kicked in the groin, and her head had also been severely beaten. She also had severe hemorrhaging in her head, her groin area, and her body was covered in both bruises and carpet burns. But Davidson had said in his confession that Channon had begged for her life and stated to him that she didn't want to die. Now, I am so sorry because what I have already said and discussed is just vile, heinous and horrific, but the next part only seems to get worse, but I promise you we are nearly through this part of things. And I also just want to state, I do not enjoy going into this kind of detail, but it is so important that we understand exactly what these victims were put through. What they've suffered and endured is complete and utter mental and physical torture. And we cannot take away from these victims and how they died, because they did suffer. They suffered so severely, more than anything I've heard for a long time. And we need to remember that. We can't be scared to speak about these things because this is how these people were taken. These monsters exist. Whilst Channon was alive, the group, they start to panic and they realise that DNA evidence and semen would be found on Channon if they killed her and left her how she was. Whilst Channon's alive, they pour bleach down her throat and they pour it all over her body and they scrub every single area of Channon's body, and this includes her battered, bruised and hemorrhaging genital area. Channon was then hogtied by the group and a small plastic bag was placed tightly over her head so she could barely breathe, and then her body was put into 5 big trash bags, all tied up. Now, Channon, she would be naked apart from a camisole vest and also a sweater that she was wearing, but her body would be placed in a residential waste unit inside the home in the kitchen and then just covered with sheets. In terms of when Channon passed away, it is unknown the exact time, but they believe it was somewhere between January the 7th and then the next afternoon of January the 8th. And let me tell you this. Whilst Channon is lying in there, suffocating to death and in absolute agony, Davidson had just left her there to die. And he went to visit his girlfriend. Whilst Channon lay there dying in his kitchen, in his home, wrapped up in trash bags. He even gave Channon's possessions to his girlfriend. And he was also spotted wearing Chrissy's shoes. Not only was he wearing Chrissy's shoes, but he was also using his bloody mobile phone. There's no remorse from any of these people. It is insane. When Channon and Chris both didn't show up to the party, their friends immediately feel a bit concerned. But ultimately they're like, you know, they are out for dinner, maybe they're just taking a bit longer or just enjoying spending some more time together before they come. But when it got to 11 p.m, this is when the worry really started to kick in, because they were phoning and texting both Channon and Chris, and of course there was no answer. Now at this time of 11 p.m, 2 of Chrissy's friends were so concerned for both him and Channon that they headed back to the apartment complex. Now when they got there, they seen that Chrissy's truck was still in the parking lot, but Channon's SUV was missing. Now, a witness had actually noticed that the street, which housed 2316, seemed a lot busier than usual, and the home, 2316, still had its lights on. Now, at this point, it's early in the morning, it's the middle of the night when all this is going on. Now, this witness had also said that a forerunner had actually drove by him very, very slowly and basically, was checking him out, staring at him through the windows, and he was able to identify that there was 4 men in this SUV and there wasn't any sign of a female. So where was Vanessa Coleman at this point? I'm not sure. There was another witness as well who had actually heard 3 pops, so 3 gunshots, around 1:45 a.m. near the train tracks. Bud is trying to chew my skincare hairband. Bud, come on baby, off you get. No. There you are, good boy. be careful. Cat life, honestly. Now, on the 7th of January of 2007, around 12:20 p.m, Chris's body would be found near the train tracks. And although examiners were able to confirm that there was semen inside of his body, because he had been set on fire, this DNA had been destroyed, so they would not be able to detect whose semen it was, but they could say 100% that Chris had been raped. This same day, Channon's mother and her sister are desperately trying to get in contact with her. They've not heard from her, which is really strange. They usually hear from Channon by now. So they're calling her, they're texting her, and still no sign. And the dread only continues to build further when Channon doesn't show up for work. The family and friends of both Channon and Chris, they had been searching desperately for them. They had been contacting hospitals, and they had even filed missing person reports. And you know what absolutely disgusted me in this case as well is that Channon's parents, she begged law enforcement for help. She begged them to help look for her daughter and for Chris, and law enforcement rejected the request. They told her that they would have to look themselves. Are you kidding me? So since it seemed like law enforcement had absolutely no desire whatsoever to help find Channon, her family ended up contacting her mobile phone provider to see if they could get a ping for her last known location. So the mobile phone provider, they run it and they confirmed that her last ping was on Cherry Street. Now, her family and friends, they searched Cherry Street for Channon, and this is where they would locate Channon's 4Runner SUV. Now, at first, the parents don't believe that this is Channon's because the stickers that she had on the back of her SUV, they had been taken off. So they were trying so hard to convince themselves that, look, this couldn't be their daughter's car. But it was. It was just that the criminals had removed the stickers in the hopes that the police would not be able to identify Channon's car. That's the intelligence level that we're working with. They think if you remove a couple of stickers that have been put on a car by an individual, they'll not be able to trace the car back. Idiotic. Just realised that I hadn't confirmed the date that this was found, and it was found on Monday the 8th of January. When they were investigating Channon's car, they realised that a lot of Channon's personal items were missing. I mean, her teddy bear that she kept in her car was missing alongside her photographs. And then her phone charger and also her iPod were both missing as well. Her family also noticed that the seats of Channon's car are pushed so far back. Now, being this far back meant that Channon would not have been able to drive it because her feet wouldn't reach the pedals. So who had been driving her car? And another huge thing that really stood out to Channon's family was the fact that her car, that she would usually keep immaculate, was covered in mud. There was mud all over the mats, the seats. It just felt like some stranger had been in her car. Inside the car, they had also found cigarettes that did not belong to either Chris or Channon. There was also an envelope, and with this envelope, police were able to extract fingerprints from it. When they ran these fingerprints, it would lead them directly to 2316 and to the suspect, Lamarcius Davidson. His address was just 2 blocks away from where Channon's car would be found. Now, on Tuesday, January the 9th, the police would attend 2316 Chipman Road, and when they entered the home, it looked as though it was empty, until they then found the body of Channon wrapped up in these trash bags. These bags, of course, had Davidson's fingerprints all over them, and they concluded that Davidson's sperm was found in Channon's vagina, her anus, and Cobbins's sperm was found in her mouth. They also found Channon's purse, her camera, clothing, shoes. They found her photographs, which they had all ripped up and burnt as if they meant nothing. And they would also be able to locate her iPod. Now, there were some items belonging to Chris there as well, including quite a few of his baseball caps. They also found his driving licence, and then they also located shell casings that matched the shell casings from the scene of where Chris had been shot and murdered. Of course, at this point, the police want to find Davidson immediately, and they undertake this huge manhunt to try and locate him, and it would be Eric Boyd that would point police in the direction of like a vacant, abandoned house that Davidson was hiding out in. So on January the 11th, Davidson would be arrested, and with him they would locate Chrissy's shoes and also a .22 caliber high standard revolver. And of course, Davidson, being the scumbag piece of crap that he is, does not want to take any accountability or responsibility for the monstrous actions that he partook in. So he said that he left his house on the Friday and he hadn't been there. He hadn't been aware of any crimes that had taken place. It must have been the other four who went to his house, committed the crimes, and then left Channon's body there. His other story then was that two of his accomplices, Thomas and Cobbins, they had drove by his house and they had Channon sort of like tied up in the back of the car. He said he wanted no part in this. He wanted nothing to do with this. And so he went away. You think you're a big man when you are brutally torturing and murdering people, and yet when the police come, you've got your tail between your legs? Strap on up here. Also on January the 11th, Thomas, Cobbins and Coleman, they were arrested in Kentucky, and when they were arrested, they were able to locate again some of Channon's possessions. They found a purse with her makeup bag and like a change purse in it. Now, after the arrest of those three, there was a journal that was located that apparently belonged to Vanessa Coleman, and she had put in just the most evil entry when you really think about it, and I'm just going to read it to you now. It's from January the 9th. So the journal entry read, "Last night was one of a kind. We stayed with a crackhead that is cool as hell. It snowed a little bit, but it's already melted. Let's talk about adventures. I had one hell of an adventure since I've been in Big TN. It's a crazy world these days, but I love the fun adventures and lessons that I've learned. It's going to be a long, interesting year." Now, forensic examiners, once they performed their examination, they concluded that this handwriting 100% belonged to Vanessa Coleman. Does that sound like someone who is remorseful for any part in these crimes? No. Honestly, the trials were an absolute show in this case. That is the only way I can put it. 4 of these suspects, they were meant to be tried individually between May and August of 2008. First off, they get pushed to 2009, which that happens. Now, Thomas and Cobbins, they would be tried in Davidson County, and the attorneys for Thomas, they filed for a motion for a speedy trial because they believed that there was no real forensic evidence to link him to the crime. Now, this would be granted and the trial would be scheduled for August the 11th of 2008. Now, the DA, they confirmed that the state would seek the death penalty for both Cobbins and Vanessa Coleman if they were found guilty. Now, Davidson, his attorney, he wanted a change of venue. He didn't think that Davidson would get a fair trial in this county. However, the judge basically denied this and ruled that he's not really going to get a fair trial anywhere because he's a monster. So Eric Boyd would be found guilty on April the 16th of 2009. He was convicted of being an accessory to a fatal carjacking and also failing to report the location of a known fugitive. However, he would not be charged with murder and would only receive 18 years. How? And then on August the 24th of 2009, Lutalvis Cobbins, he would be found guilty of both murders. He was sentenced to life without parole. Where's the death penalty? Where is the death penalty? Or I wish there was a torture penalty, like something that people would be sentenced to that they had to be tortured to death, like the torture death penalty. Let's bring that in. Then on October the 8th of 2009, Lamarcius Davidson, he would be found guilty on both murders and he would be sentenced to death. They all should be, but I'll take at least one. And then on December the 8th of 2009, George Thomas was found guilty and sentenced to life without parole. On May the 13th of 2010, Vanessa Coleman was acquitted of first-degree murder and she would receive a lesser charge. And then on July the 30th, she was sentenced to only 53 years in prison. How is this possible? Now, I want to read a very short statement that was said by Channon's father during this time because It just really hits home. Channon's father said, "For me, personally, you took my baby. You took my opportunity to say yes to a young man one day. You took my wedding dance away. You took away my opportunity to hold her child, my grandbaby." Now, the judge who was in charge of this first initial trial was Judge Richard Baumgartner. He would be forced to resign in 2011. It had been revealed that he was actually holding the court whilst he was high on drugs. He was an addict. I think he was addicted to painkillers. He was getting his drugs from a felon, and apparently during court break sessions, he was exchanging legal favours for sex. Now, because of this, on December the 1st of 2011, Judge Blackwood, he would grant a new trial for all of the suspects. Due to double jeopardy, the maximum sentence that these people could receive was the sentence that they received in the first trial. So the only one who would be sentenced to death, if that's the sentence that they get, would be Davidson. However, they could also be let off on lesser charges. In May of 2012, the Tennessee Supreme Court, they actually overturned Judge Blackwood's ruling for new trials for Cobbins, Thomas and Davidson. In June 2012, Blackwood, he grants retrials again for the three of them. However, this would be denied yet again by Tennessee Supreme Court. And this here is the final verdicts that would be served. Vanessa Coleman was sentenced to 35 years, which was a lesser sentence than her first. George Thomas was found guilty on 38 separate counts. He was resentenced to life in prison with possibility for parole after 51 years. George Thomas would testify in Eric Boyd's trial. Now, by doing this, his first-degree murder charge was reduced to second-degree murder. Aggravated rape was reduced to aggravated assault. And his sentence for life in prison with possibility of parole after 51 years had the possibility to be reduced by 15% for good behaviour. Eric Boyd, he would be sentenced to life in prison, and he also received an additional 90 years. Now, Boyd did request a new trial and appealed multiple times, but all of these were denied. Now, after a lot of lobbying by the victims' friends and family, there were 2 new laws brought in 2014, and I'm going to go through them now with you. So the first one that we have is the Chris Newsom Act. This act had been introduced to eliminate the need for a judge's signature on a jury verdict after the delivery of a unanimous verdict. So this eliminates the 13th juror rule, which stipulates that a judge must validate a jury's verdict. Had such law been in place during the case, the retrials would have been avoided. Next, we have the Channon Christian Act. This act restricts attorneys and defendants in attempting to portray a victim in a negative light, such as making allegations about their behaviour prior to their death. Now, during this trial, Davidson had alleged that Chris and Channon had come to his house to buy drugs. Now, according to Channon's mother, her family, they felt great pain as a result from these accusations because they just knew it was so blindly untrue. Another thing that has been done to honour the lives of Channon and Chris is they've actually got a foundation set up as well. So for Channon, she has a foundation set up where an annual scholarship is given out every year to one of the Farragut High School senior students to attend the University of Tennessee, and this is all done under Channon's name. And for Chris, he also has an annual scholarship that is given out. This would be given to a graduating Halls High School baseball player. I'm sure that means the absolute world to them, and you know, it helps keep their names alive, it helps keep their names out there because they deserve to be remembered, and they deserve to be remembered for more than their murder. They deserve to be remembered for who they are as people and how generous they were. And I think this scholarship just really reinstates the generosity of them. This is what they would have wanted. You know, they would have wanted something good to come from this for other people. That's the kind of people they were. This case and these names of Channon Christian and also Chris Newsom, they will stay with me for life. I just know it. The evilness is just unfathomable. So please, every single one of you, I know you always do and you always will, but please remember Channon and Chris for the amazing people that they were, the people who we spoke about in the start, who are so loved and cherished, who had big, kind hearts, infectious smiles, and who were so talented with their whole lives ahead of them, with such bright futures. Please remember them for that. Whilst I have never known Channon or Chris, just by reading up on them, watching interviews, seeing how people talk about them, I can tell how special they are to the people who loved them and the difference that they would have made in this world. So I am so sorry for your loss. I am just sending so much love your way. So angels, that is the end of another true crime and makeup episode. I know this one was a really, really heavy case, but for me, it just doesn't seem spoken about enough. It took me a long time before I heard about this case, and honestly, I can't believe that it doesn't really have more coverage. It's just so sinister, and when I came across it, I could not believe that I hadn't heard of it before. If you feel like you have been affected by this case, you know, if it's made you a bit upset like it has me, please take some time for yourself, look after yourself, do something that you enjoy, do something that's positive, really just try and get your energy back up, because I appreciate all your love and support, but I cannot say it enough. Please look after your mental well-being. If these videos affect you, take a break. If you feel like you can't even watch them anymore, then please don't, because your mental well-being needs to be top priority over supporting me and my channel. I love and care about you all too much to put you through pain. If you do enjoy my content, please make sure that you like, comment and subscribe. Put that notification bell on so you don't miss when I upload every Wednesday and Sunday at 7:30 British Standard Time. In the description below you will find all the details you need, my social media handles, my email if you want to email over a case, or of course you can pop it in the comments below and I'll add it right to the list. If there's any products that you like the look of today, they will all be linked down below as well for you if you would like to purchase them. But that is it for today. Please stay safe, be a good person, don't be a bad person, look after each other, and until the next one, I will see you later. Bye!